Most people picture the fallen angels as one nameless crowd of shadows cast out of heaven. But the Book of Enoch, in chapter 8, lists 9 of them one by one, and beside each name it records exactly what that one came down to teach the sons of men. 9 names, 9 trades. This is the part of the record that was left outside most Bibles, and we are going to read it in order, verse by verse. And the 9th name, the one the text saves for last, is the one that unsettles most. Keep it in mind. We get there. Start with the version you already know. The sons of God fall. They rebel. They are cast down. And after that, they blur into one dark mass. A horde, a legion, faceless. That is the picture the familiar telling leaves you with. A crowd. The Book of Enoch does not leave them in a crowd. It counts them. It names them. And beside each name, it writes down a job. Not a sin in general. A specific thing each one taught men to do. Chapter 8 opens with the first. His name is Azazel. The text records that Azazel taught men to make swords, and knives, and shields, and breastplates. Read plainly. That is the making of war itself. The blade, the armor, the whole trade of killing at scale. Read that again, not as legend, as a list. It names the man, then names the trade. Azazel, and beside him, weapons. That is the shape of the whole chapter. A name, then a thing that came into the world through him. Before we go further, one thing needs saying, because it changes how you hear the rest. This is not a curiosity someone dreamed up in the margins. It is a genuinely preserved document. In the caves at Qumran, along the Dead Sea, 11 separate copies of Enoch surfaced, written in Aramaic. 11. That is more copies than several books that stayed inside the canon. It was kept for centuries in Ge'ez, the old liturgical language of Ethiopia, held as scripture in the Ethiopian church. And it was carried back to Europe by a Scottish traveler named James Bruce in 1773. So when the text counts these names, it is a real book counting them, one that many hands worked hard to keep. Now back to the count. The second name in chapter 8 is Amazarach. The text records that Amazarach taught the cutting of roots and the enchantments, the charms and the sorceries. Roots pulled from the ground for their power and words said over them. That is his trade. The third name is Armoros. And here the text does something strange. Armoros, it records, taught the resolving of enchantments, the undoing of the same charms Amazarach gave. Look at what just happened. One watcher hands men the spell. The next hands men the way to break it. Knowledge given, and then knowledge to unmake it. The list is already building a pattern, and it is doing it on purpose. The fourth name is Barak-Ijal, and with him the text lifts its eyes off the ground. Barak-Ijal taught astrology, the reading of fate in the sky. Up to now, the trades have been earthbound. Metal, roots, words spoken low. Barak-Ijal is the first turn upward, the first time a watcher points men at the heavens and says, "The answers are written there, and I will teach you to read them." Hold on to that turn. It matters more than it looks like right now. Keep count as we go. You'll want to know which of the 9 the text holds back for last, because the order is not random, and once you see where it ends, you cannot unsee it. So far, that is 4 names, 4 trades, and we have barely left the opening of one chapter. Now set that beside the version most people were handed. Genesis 6. The passage everyone reaches for when the fallen ones come up. Read it and count the verses that carry the whole descent. It is 4. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were fair, and they took them wives. There were giants in the earth in those days. 4 flat lines, and the door closes. Genesis compresses the entire event into a single breath. Enoch spends whole chapters on what Genesis buries in a sentence. It names the ones Genesis leaves nameless. It assigns the trades Genesis never mentions. And here is the thing. Enoch is not the only book that names this. 2 other ancient records tell the very same descent, and one of them even names the offspring these watchers left behind. Set them side by side, and the church's word for all of this, legend, starts to come apart in your hands. The other 2 records. The Book of Jubilees, in chapter 5, tells the same descent Enoch tells, the watchers coming down, the corruption of the sons of men. And the Book of Giants, recovered in fragments from the same caves at Qumran, goes further. It names the offspring these watchers left behind. 3 separate texts, the same event, the same figures. That is not how folklore behaves. Look at Jubilees for a moment. Chapter 5 does not read like a wild retelling. It is sober. It says, the angels of the Lord came down and saw the daughters of men, and they took wives, and the earth was filled with wickedness. The same fall, the same result. Written by a different hand, in a different book, and yet the shape does not move. Then the Book of Giants pushes past where Jubilees stops. Those Aramaic fragments, pulled out of the Qumran caves in pieces, name the sons these watchers fathered. Names like Ohia and Hahia. The giants who woke from dreams they could not read, dreams of a flood coming to wipe them out. This is the aftermath of what the 9 set in motion, written down as its own record. So hold the count in your head. 9 names in chapter 8. 9 trades. And now, 3 books, not 1, standing behind them. Now, the word. This is where the list changes under your hands. In the Ge'ez, the language the book was kept in for all those centuries in Ethiopia, the verb behind what Azazel gave the sons of men is not simply the word for teaching. Its root carries the sense of uncovering. To lay bare. To strip the cover off a thing that was meant to stay hidden. Read against that root. None of these are lessons. A lesson is given freely, to lift someone up. This is something pried open. Azazel did not teach war the way a master teaches a craft. He uncovered it. He tore the lid off something that was closed on purpose, and he handed men what was underneath. Hold that root in your head, uncovering, not teaching, because it changes every single name on this list. The cutting of roots. The reading of fate in the sky. Every one of them stops being a gift and becomes a thing dragged into the light that was never supposed to see it. And here is where I want to be fair, because the standard reading deserves that. For a very long time, the church treated these names as legend. Folklore, layered over the 4 bare verses of Genesis 6 by later hands who wanted to fill the silence. And there are honest reasons to read it that way. Genesis itself does not name a single watcher. The names arrive in Enoch, in a book left outside most Bibles, and caution is not the same thing as dishonesty. But legend has a texture, and this is not it. Legend swells. It rounds numbers off. It says a great host of angels fell and leave it there. It does not stop to count. It does not stop to name. It does not assign one man to swords and shields and breastplates, and a second man to the cutting of roots, and a third to the undoing of those same charms. Chapter 8 counts. It names. It gives each one a trade and moves to the next like a ledger. Whatever this is, it is built like a record, and any reading that calls it folklore still has to explain why the folklore keeps such careful books. Before we move on, stop for a second. What you just heard, the root that reads uncover instead of teach, is the part that changes everything, but it only makes sense written out next to the passages themselves. The chapters, the cross-references, the translated JS laid beside the English. I put all of it into a written document. It's linked below, and the QR code is on your screen. Take 5 seconds, grab it, and come back, because what comes next builds directly on it. Now back to the list, because Chapter 8 is not finished, and the trades are changing. Notice where the list is pointing now. It has left the ground entirely. The sword was here, in your hand. The charm was close, root and word. But watch the 5th name, Kokabel, who taught the constellations, the fixed patterns burning overhead. Then the 6th, Ezekiel, who taught the knowledge of the clouds, the reading of the weather itself. Then Arakiel, the 7th, who taught the signs of the earth. Then the 8th, Shamsiel, who taught the signs of the sun. Feel the climb. The text records these one after another, and every one of them lifts higher off the ground than the last. From the blade to the star. From the thing you hold to the thing you can only look up at. 8 named. 8 trades. 1 name left. And the 9th is not a weapon, not a charm, not a star chart. The text holds back for last the man who taught the course of the moon. Chapter 8 saves the calendar for the end, and the reason it does is the whole point. The course of the moon. Serial, the 9th name in Chapter 8, who taught the sons of men the course of the moon. Read it slowly, because the text just did something deliberate. After the sword, after the charm, after the constellations and the clouds and the sun, the last thing on the list is not a way to kill and not a way to enchant. It is the reckoning of time, the calendar, the measuring of the heavens. Say that name and sit with it. The other 8, you can almost picture in a man's hands. A blade, a root, a chart of the stars. But the 9th is different. The 9th is the counting of the days, the tracking of the moon from thin sliver to full circle and back again. The thing that tells you when to plant, when to feast, when the year begins. Time itself, handed down. And Chapter 8 puts it dead last. So let me stop and say plainly what is mine and what is the text. What I am about to give you is a reading. The book records the names. The book records the trades. The book does not tell you what the order means. That part is me, arguing from the shape of the list. Keep that line clear. Here is what I see. The list does not run from small to large by accident. Watch where it walks. It starts with Azazel and the sword, the thing you can hold, the thing you can see coming at you across a field. It ends with Serial and the moon, the thing no man will ever touch, wheeling over the desert stone every night, out of reach, from the ground to the sky, from the weapon in your fist to the light you can only look up at. Say the 9 over in your head in order, and watch where they go. Ground, then sky, then time. War first, then sorcery, the charms and the cutting of roots, then the undoing of that same sorcery, then the stars, the clouds, the signs of the earth, the sun, and at the top of the climb, the moon and the count of the days. The list is climbing. It leaves the earth, and it does not stop until it reaches the calendar. And here is the leap. The structure suggests that the real corruption on this list was never only violence. The sword is terrible, but the sword is honest. You can see what it does. The thing held back for last is quieter and larger. It is giving men a way to read the heavens as though they owned them, to take the moon, which belongs to no one, and turn it into a thing men measure, mark, and command. The text does not draw that line. the order does. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Because look at what actually ran through all 9. Every gift on this list is a thing pried open. Remember the jez root, not simply the word for teaching, but for uncovering, laying bare a thing that was meant to stay hidden. War laid bare, sorcery laid bare. Then the undoing of sorcery, so nothing stays sealed. Then the whole sky, pried open piece by piece, the stars, the clouds, the earth's own signs, the sun, and finally the moon. 9 names, and each one is a door that was opened. The pattern was never 9 separate crimes. It was one long act of uncovering, and it did not finish until the last curtain, the sky, had been drawn all the way back. That is the pattern of this book. Knowledge given, then knowledge to unmake it. Something sealed, then something to break the seal. The Watchers do not appear in chapter 8 as monsters. They appear as teachers. That is what makes the list heavy. Everything they handed down looks at first like a gift. And now stand back from all of it. 9 names, verse numbered, set down in a single chapter of a book most Bibles left outside. Not a rumor, not a crowd of nameless shadows. A counted record: Azazel, Amazarach, Armaros, Barakijal, Kokabel, Ezekiel, Arakiel, Shamsiel, and last of all, Sariel. Written down, numbered, kept. Think about who kept it. 11 copies in the caves at Qumran in Aramaic. Centuries of monks copying it out in ge'ez in the highlands of Ethiopia, page by page, long after the rest of the church had set it down. James Bruce, carrying it back to Europe in 1773, when almost no one in the West had read a word of it. This list survived because people refused to let it disappear. You do not copy a thing that carefully by hand, generation after generation, unless you believe it was meant to be read. And that is the whole of it. Something kept this carefully was meant to be read. 9 names, in order, from the sword you can see to the sky you cannot reach, laid bare and handed down, and then guarded by the very people everyone else forgot to ask. So tell me, which of the 9 carries the most weight to you, the sword or the moon? And ask yourself why it unsettles more that the last name on the list is the one who taught men to measure the heavens. The next reading picks up where this one ends, deeper in the same book.